Wow, you can see we've got quite a disparity on number 6.
You know, this was the best sports sedan in the world. And we've got a weird rattle there, yeah.
We've got enough gap. It's probably like a mil or two. Welcome back to the conclusion of the BMW E34 M5 refresh. We've done all of the cosmetics, and today there's a couple small things to get done, and then we're gonna take this thing for a proper rip. If you guys recall in a previous video series on this car, mechanically it is pretty much perfect. I replaced all the vacuum lines, fixed any of the issues. The one thing, however, I still have an issue with is the syncing of the throttle bodies. I'll start this car up and then you can hear in the exhaust how this car isn't running perfect, and that is because one of the throttle bodies or a couple of the throttle bodies are out of sync, and that is one of the downsides to what is a motorsports grade engine is you've got these amazing throttle bodies. However, they do need to be in sync and they do fall out of sync. These cars are now getting to be quite old and you do have to maintain them. So I think I've got the solution, but let's start this up and hear what it sounds like. You hear that little slight sputter? That right there does to me indicate that we do have a little bit of a sync issue. However, noise-wise or ear-wise, that's not really the best way to check this out. Using a proper tool is. If you also watched the previous video series, you saw me try to use this thing, which is called a DigiSync, and it hooks up to the throttle bodies as such and gives us a readout, and then you want to try to match that readout. This did not work. It was giving us inconsistent readings. It was just, I couldn't get it dialed in. So I went back to the old-fashioned setup, which is this right here. This is called the Mantis Manometer. As you can see, it is a very simple contraption that just has liquid that runs through tubes, and these tubes are now connected to the throttle bodies. Now comes a moment of truth where we start this up and we can see how much vacuum each throttle body is drawing, and we can see how out of sync this is. So the engine does need to be warmed up first of all, which it is, and wow, you can see we've got quite a disparity on number 6. That's 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1 is a little bit low too. So now what I'm gonna do is get out my 8mm and start adjusting here. Right here. It's weird though, DP, because watch, when I adjust 6, look how 1 went down.
Yeah, that is weird.
So it's, the one thing I don't really know about this is how I'm supposed to,
the instructions say adjust them until they're all basically level. That's all it says.
That's fully closed on 2. And that's also fully closed on 4. Like if I open 4 up, it just goes up higher. All right, we gotta take a pause here. The only other thing I can think of is these are mechanically out of sync right now, which could be causing this. This is less than 10 minutes of work, and off comes the intake plenum. You can see here. Now we've got our ITBs exposed. Now in order to sync these together mechanically, I do have this tool from Angry Ass that I used before, ironically, and it's a dial gauge and basically a 3D printed adapter here that you can see will bolt onto the throttle body just as such. So with this secure, what I'm gonna do now is basically back off the throttle plates to 0. As you can see, that is my 0 marker. So I set this to 0, and the BMW spec is 0.10, which is right here. So now I'm gonna take the adjustment screw and bring that in until I see 0.10 and then tighten this up. We have this set here opening and closing to 0.10. So now I'm gonna have to repeat this on the first 2 and the last 2, and then theoretically we should all be mechanically in sync. Everything's back together, so let's start this thing up. See, it already sounds better.
It does, yeah.
Dyno control is good, and you can see how's she reading over here. Well, okay. So you can see we're way better than we were in the past. So they were very misaligned. Basically, we want to be right in this range of like, whatever, 392, I think 8.8 or 8.5 millibars or something like that. But this is the range we want to be in. So now I'm going to start making some adjustments here and seeing what happens. So I think I am about there. I took about 5 or so minutes, and interestingly enough, if you adjust one, it does change the others just slightly. I'm not sure why, but I think we're at this point like super, super close. I could try to fine tune it, but I think we're good enough. And you can see the idle is better. It still has a bit, it's still a little, you know, shaky, rumbly, but I think that is the Motorsports grade engine. This one might come as a bit of a shock to some of you. I do not love the short shifter that I put on this car, and that is a stock E60 BMW shifter that reduces the throw, and you can see it's just been like higher effort, which I don't necessarily love. I don't mind the throw of it per se. You can see it's nice and short, but I find from like a daily driving or like stop and go traffic situation, it just doesn't really suit my needs and feel proper. So I jumped on FCP Euro and ordered up the entire kit, all of the, you know, the rods, the little bushing in the back. So we've got a bit of work to do here, but I am curious going back to this. I think it's gonna be much better. And there is a annoying fly, DP. Do you think I got him? I got him? There you go. My reflexes are still good. Look at the difference in terms of where the shifter sits too. So that is why this was a short shifter and this one is not. And I did realize underneath, thankfully, I actually went through and replaced a lot of the worn parts. And public service announcement, this bushing in the back is always worn, so you want to replace this if you haven't done so. And the other more important bushing, or I don't even know what to call this, is this. This is the rod. The rod connects to the transmission through this piece right here, and you can see this piece of foam. It is always worn, and that's what gives you that like sloppy shifter feel in BMWs. This piece of foam is always worn, so this little piece you always want to replace as well. Everything's back together, and look, it already feels so much smoother, much less resistance than it was before. It's just like, it was stock, it was meant to be this way. The last thing I now need to choose is whether I'm gonna run the stock OE E34 BMW M5 shift knob, or am I gonna go to what I think is an E46 ZHP shift knob? So you can see it's quite a bit lower. And I think this one might be the way to go because it's gonna be just down a little bit more. And yeah, man, that feels nice as opposed to this guy here. Let's just move this, this wiring. Yeah, see, that one's just a little bit too high now. I like the other one. So we're going with this guy on here, and we're gonna call that install done. Just pound it on. Oh, and it feels perfect, but when we drive this thing, I'll have a better review for you guys. And back in the driver's seat, DP.
Yeah.
Man, it is nice. This thing just has 90s BMW vibes.
It sure does.
That
sure does. And smells.
Yes, yeah. It's amazing how the interior still has that like leathery smell.
It does have a leathery smell, and the engine has a particular smell to it too.
Yes,
it's all good though. And yes, we're going up the escarpment again like we just did in Connie, and it's quieter and more refined in here than in the Celica, that's for sure.
It is, man.
For a 91, this thing actually feels really well put together and very solid on the road. But I guess, you know, this was the best sports sedan in the world.
And we've got
a weird rattle there, yeah. Sounds like it's in your door to me.
No, it's coming from the shifter.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It could be.
Don't cross the yellow line or the internet will get on your case, Peter.
Yeah, well.
I heard a little tire up there too. Did you hear that?
No, but this is what happens when you finish building your car, you take it for a test drive.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I think you're right. That is in the shifter. It's in the tunnel area somewhere. Oh,
anyways, small little problem.
Yeah, that's fixable.
The thing about the shifter is it feels 100 times better than the stock one, which is remarkable.
Not the stock one, but the E.
Sorry, the short shifter.
Short shifter, yeah.
Oh, DP.
Sounds good, eh?
This thing, come on.
It's got good top end.
Like, how smooth is that?
Very smooth. It really is.
So smooth.
Buttery smooth.
Yeah, and the shifter, the throws are longer, but with this shift knob, honestly, it's so much nicer. The effort, that's the big thing. The effort has changed. It being such a lower effort throw makes a world of a difference. Before it felt clunkier.
Yeah.
Where now, look, feel this thing. It's just like, I get it. BMW was right on something.
Yeah.
So it feels so much nicer in that sense.
Short shifters always have that high effort feel. It makes the gearbox feel notchier. Yes, I'm never sold on short shifters personally.
Yes, I agree with you. The syncing of the throttle bodies. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
What a difference that made
from
spent. Like a start-stop standpoint. See, now I can just like lean into it, just the ever so slightest. See how smooth that is? It feels like OEM, where before it would feel like this, where it would like jump up like that. Now look, I've got like amazing modulation.
Drop down nice and slowly.
Look, give it a little bit of gas and get going, and look at that.
Very nice.
And let's just. Oh, DP. That's nice. DP. Come on, NA.
Yeah.
Man, this thing was such a car for its time, and that's why I love this model of E34 M5. Like, this was such a great generation of car, and I love it. It just feels so remarkably good.
It does feel very pure, doesn't it?
It does.
It feels very mechanical. It sounds very mechanical. It's got a really linear power band.
Yes.
It just seems to pull the whole way.
Yep.
Feels like an Autobahn Cruiser, really, doesn't it? Like, it feels like it wants to go fast.
It's refined enough where you could really daily drive this and enjoy it.
I think
for what it is. It is a very analog feel. It's like, to me, the last of the pure BMWs where they were simplified, where the E39, CAN bus, all these things got kind of more complex. This still, to me, is like such a great vehicle overall.
Yeah, it does. And the style of it is beautiful too.
Yes.
Like, it is very boxy, and yet somehow it's also very pleasing to the eye. Like, it's got just enough rake to it to look like it's in motion when it's sitting still.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful design, and on these wheels, I think it really pops. It looks great.
It's a compelling package for me. Like, I love this car. I was in love with it as a high school teenager, and getting into it now, it just reminds me how good it is. Whether I keep it or not, well, that's difficult to say, but it's such a great car. And I think anyone looking for that 90s BMW experience should certainly look at this type of vehicle.
Yeah, I think you would not be disappointed. It's one of those heroes that you can meet and not feel disappointed in.
DP, I sorry to interrupt. The rear seat isn't locked in. That's where the noise
rattling is.
That's so funny.
That is
I forgot I had the battery out, but
okay. Well, that's an easier fix then.
Yeah.
Mystery solved.
There you go. But look at that. Like, it just feels so smooth. It's so tight. Like, obviously the suspension has been done over on this car.
Yeah.
And on roads like these, it proves that this car you can really enjoy and love.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I don't, I'll go back to about these cars is they have steering boxes. So the steering is good because I've tightened the box up, but those boxes kind of just have play in them. So it's not as precise as a proper rack and pinion.
Yeah,
and that's where I struggle with it. But like, from a perspective of like pep and what the car should feel
it's still
like
plenty fast.
Like, that feels good, right?
It pushes you back in the seat, so it gives you a sensation of speed.
Slow car.
No, it's not.
It's pretty perfect for what I think this generation of M car is, and I wouldn't even
use
want
all
more
this performance. Yeah, exactly.
So
Dave was right. We did hear some slight rubbing while driving this car, and it is the slightest of rubbing. You can see the tire has just barely touched the inner side of the fender here. And well, unfortunately with these vehicles, E34s, there's no camber control on here without me going to like proper aftermarket stuff. So I think what I'm gonna do here is bust out the fender roller and just roll this a little bit just to pull this back, because I think this probably needs like 2 to 5 mil and we will have proper clearance here. Quick pro tip before you start rolling your fender, what you really wanna do is make sure there's no dirt and debris in the behind the lip here. And you can see this one I have had this happen where literally there was like a small little stone behind here and I started rolling and then all of a sudden you get a dent that pops up here and you're like, what's going on? And it's because of a stone. So this is certainly something you do want to kind of check over and make sure that you don't have anything back there. Giving this a bunch of rolls here, and I think we are probably as good as we're gonna get. This is thick German steel, so it's not like the old Japanese wavy fenders where this literally will come out in a second. It is double walled, it feels thick here, and I think I've got it to the point where it's kind of like rolled as far back as it can go. And thankfully it hasn't distorted the fender like other jobs that I've done. So it still looks stock, which is kind of nice. I think what we're gonna try to do is we're gonna take the lower suspension bolt out and see if we can stroke this without having the shock on, because that's really the one way to check quickly other than having to put the wheel back on, go for a test drive, and check again. It is incredibly close, DP, but we've got enough gap. It's probably like a mil or two.
That's the dream setup, buddy.
Well, yeah, it is. It
It
looks like we're gonna be okay. Ideally, I could probably try to pull it out a little bit more, but I just don't want to risk it. Again, I think we'll be all right. So I'm gonna call this one done. Man, what a machine, and wheels and tires and a spoiler transformed this car for me. What do you guys think? I've fallen in love with it all over again. It certainly looks the part. It has more of like a hot rod feel, like a muscle car. You know, a German muscle car feel with this wheel and tire setup, and the fitment on it just looks so good. I think the ride height is perfect, but of course, post in the comments, tell me what you guys think. Is going away from the OEM look a little too far with these wheels and tires, or is it just right? So that is going to be a wrap on this episode, and really whether I keep this M5 or not, I do love it, but at the same time, we have so many cars, so I have been contemplating selling it. I just don't know. I'm just like you guys, I have the sickness. I don't want to let any cars go, but I also realize that I can't drive them all. So who knows what the fate of this car is, and who knows if you'll see it next year, but thank you guys so much for watching. And if you're interested in supporting us, certainly check out the memberships in the description below. That helps support us quite well. And that's it, guys. We will see you in the next one.